Hello again. As you know, I am Eli the Computer Guy, and today's class is Understanding Windows Server Editions. So wait. This is kind of like the licensing class where I don't want your eyes to glaze over. I know when I start talking about this stuff, the first thing you're going to want to do is click next and go to the next video. But as a professional technician, you need to understand the different editions of Windows Server software that are available on the market and understand what they do. This may come into play if you are a manager or if you are asked to make the decision on what software to buy, or if you come in behind another technician or another company and you're asked to make repairs or to make upgrades to systems. Knowing what the different server operating systems can do can really matters. I mean, if your client is asking you to do something that the server operating system simply cannot do, it would be best if you know that. If you understand that there are different additions to the server software, understand that there's different functionality for the different editions of the server software, and just how they all work in a real network environment. So this class is Understanding Windows Server Editions. Give me a second. We're going to come back. We're going to open all this up so I can really explain to you all these different editions of server software, because they get just foolishly confusing. Now, as we talked about before in other classes in this server track, remember, a server is simply a computer that provides services to other computers on the network. So if you have a computer with a shared folder and people can access that folder, you have a server. If you have a computer with a shared printer and your buddy across the hall can print to the printer that is connected to your computer, then your computer is technically a print server. Even if the operating system that is on that computer is Windows XP Home Edition, still within the IT world, that is a server. Now, server operating systems are basically operating systems that are optimized in order to provide services to network clients. So obviously, if you have a Windows XP home computer, it is optimized to do a lot of things. You can play video games on it. You can edit graphics on it. You can do all the kinds of things that you're going to want to be able to do on it. But that Windows XP Home operating system may not be very good at connecting 10,000 clients at any one time. That's not what it's optimized for. Server operating systems are optimized for being able to handle all of these connections and being able to provide services to lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of clients. Like I say, a standard Active Directory server, Windows server, can support up to 10,000 user accounts. So I mean, that's a lot of user accounts. So when we start talking about the server operating systems, so when we're talking about server operating systems, we're talking about Windows Server 2000, Windows Server 2003, or Windows Server 2008. These operating systems are optimized to be servers. Now, as we talked about before, you have the server, so now we have software that's optimized to give resources to multiple clients on the network. But then there are add-ons. There are components that are added to that core operating system in order to make that server do the things that you think a server should do. So what this means is, if you want to have a web server, so if you want to host your own website, you install either IIS or Apache onto a Windows 2008 server operating system, and you now have a web server. If you want a domain controller for a network, so you want a domain where you have user accounts and computer accounts and all of that, you would need a server with a component called Active Directory. And if you have Active Directory, that will then make that server a domain controller for a network. If you want an email server, then you need a Windows 2008 server, and then you need something called Exchange software to install on top of that server. So don't get, back in the day, back when I started, back in 98, 99, whatever, we dealt with NT 4.0, and that was our servers. And NT 4.0, there were only two flavors of it. There was NT 4.0 server, and then there was like NT 4.0 data center edition. And really, all you had to know about what edition you needed to buy for your company is if you knew what the data center edition did, then you probably needed to buy it. If you did not know what the Data Center Edition did, then you probably did not need to buy it. I mean, basically there were only 2 versions of the server software, and you almost always use just the standard server. Now, Microsoft, just like, in the desktop world where they came out with, Vista Home Basic, Vista Home Premium, Vista Business, Vista Ultimate, and some other stuff, they've kind of done that with the server software. So before, where you basically had 2 different server operating systems, and that was it, you now have lots. You probably have 10. And so all of these different server operating system packages do different things. And so just realize that when you go out to buy a server operating system is that they do different things. Like we're going to talk about one of the additions of the server operating systems that does not have Active Directory at all. So no Active Directory possible. So if you bought this type of server operating system, you could not have a domain controller. Period. You could not create a domain. So just remember, when you're dealing with the server operating systems, the server operating systems means it's an operating system that is optimized to deal with clients connecting to the computer. But everything else on top of that is an add-on. It is an addition, whether it's IIS as a web to publish websites, whether it's SharePoint to share documents, whether it's Exchange to do email. All of those things are additional add-on components. Sometimes they come with the operating system, sometimes you have to buy it separately. But if you need your server to do a specific function, you need to make sure that option is available in whatever edition you buy. So with that, let's dive in, and we'll talk about some of the different editions that are available right now. So the first edition that we need to talk about is Windows Server Web Edition. So what this is this is a server operating system that has been optimized to provide websites or to provide web solutions for companies. So the video component of our website here at everymanit.com is run on a Windows 2008 Web Edition server. We don't need Active Directory. We don't need a lot of fancy things. Basically, we need just a very, very, very stable platform in order to be able to distribute our videos from. So that's why we're using the Web Edition. The Web Edition is one of the least expensive editions of all the server software out there, but it is exceedingly limited in a lot of functionality. Basically, what the Web Edition is meant to do is it's meant to combat Linux's Apache web server. Now, if you know anything about Linux or you know anything about open source, the Linux Apache web server is completely 100% free. Well, back in the day, if you wanted to run a website using a Microsoft server, you had to spend anywhere between $700 to $1,000 just for the server software, and then you added whatever web hosting software you wanted on top of that. So you could either go with the free Linux version. That's really good. I mean, a lot of people use it. Or you could spend $1,000 just on the software. So, of course, a lot of people didn't want to spend $1,000. So what Microsoft did is they came up with this Web Edition server software that only costs about $300. So they dramatically reduced the price point, with the idea being, if you have administrators that are already used to dealing with a Windows environment, you can buy this relatively inexpensive web server, and your people will still understand how to use it. They don't have to get trained in Linux. They don't have to get trained in Apache. They don't have to get trained in all of that stuff. This is an operating system that they already basically know. So that's why the Web Edition was created. But you have to be careful. Again, it doesn't do Active Directory. It doesn't do virtualization. It doesn't do a lot of things that the other editions of the server software do. If you're looking for just a very rock-solid way to provide web applications or websites to either internally or to your customers, the Web Edition may be what you're looking for. If you're trying to look for something like file servers, Active Directory, virtualization, all of that kind of stuff, stay away from the Web Edition. Seriously, I know either you or your boss are going to see that the Web Edition only costs about $300 versus the other editions of the operating systems costs between $600 to $2,000. And you're going to want to buy the Web Edition. But the Web Edition is very, 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 very limited. So just be careful with that. So the next edition of Windows Server operating systems that we're going to talk about is something called the Foundation Edition. And this is actually something that was new to me. Like literally when, I don't know where they come up with these editions from. When I was doing research for this class to make sure I understood what was going on, I found this whole new edition that they just popped out of nowhere. Basically, the Foundation Edition of the Windows Server operating system gives you all the functionality of a standard edition server. So this gives you IIS, the ability to provide websites. It makes it a file server. It gives you Active Directory. Basically, it does everything that you would think a server does, but it's limited to 15 accounts. So you can only connect 15 computers into the domain that is created by this Foundation Edition of the server operating system. So with a Foundation, you're able to create a domain like you would with a normal server software. You do have Active Directory, which allows you to do permissions and group policies. You can host a website. You can do everything just about that the full-fledged server edition would do, but it's limited to 15 computers being able to connect to that network. If you try to connect any more than the 15 computers, Microsoft has this whole list of ramifications in what happens. It's like if you connect the 16th computer, then it'll give you 10 days to upgrade to something else before it shuts the entire network down. I don't know, something wacky. Go look at the standards before you decide to use the Foundation. But basically, the Foundation is just the core, the stuff that you would think that a server should be able to do. Web server, FTP server, Active Directory server, virtual private network server, remote desktop server, all of that stuff, but it's limited to 15 computers. So if you're looking for something more robust than the Foundation Edition of the server operating systems, the next thing is really Bill Gates or God's or somebody's gift to the small business world, and that is the Windows Server Small Business Edition. I've been using these since the 2003 version came out, and it's absolutely fabulous. Basically, what the small business server does is it packages a lot of functionality into a single server so that you can give a small business client one server that provides the functionality that a large enterprise or corporation would have. So your server, you get the Active Directory so you can create domains, you can run a website off of it, you can do FTP off of it. But beyond that, so beyond the normal server stuff, it also is bundled with the add-on of Microsoft Exchange Server, which is the email server. So if you or your client needs to be able to have the email services, needs to be able to push out email to things like smartphones or iPhones, they need to be able to do any of that, then the small business server comes with Microsoft Exchange, just built into it. You can also get it with Microsoft SQL Server. I don't really know anybody who uses Microsoft SQL Server, but it is a possibility for you. Beyond that, there's a special component that's built in to the Small Business Server editions that allows you to be anywhere in the world. You can use Internet Explorer, connect to the server, and then connect to your desktop computer. So let's say you're the owner of a company and you're off in Italy because you're taking a vacation, and somebody says they need some information. You could literally sit in Italy, sit down at a computer with Internet Explorer. You could connect to the server and then do a remote desktop connection and remotely control your computer. Or again, imagine if you have an employee that's home that's sick and you need information from that person. Well, they can go to their computer at home with Internet Explorer, access their computer at the office, and be able to do work or whatnot. I've seen this used a lot, especially for part-time bookkeepers, so like part-time accountants, where people will set up, or businesses will set up, there's just one standalone little computer, and every once in a while the accountant accesses that computer from the outside world in order to do QuickBooks, because they're able to do that remote desktop connection. Basically, Small Business Server does everything that a small business would need. The limitation for it is that you can only put up to 75 computers onto the Small Business Server network. And honestly, most people suggest you don't put any more than 50, simply because with all of the stuff happening on a single system, on a single server, you can really bog down the system if you have more than 50 computers connected to that server. But basically, the Server Small Business Edition, if you deal with small businesses or you are a small business, you should really look at this, because this gives you all the functionality of a server, and now it even has decent backup in there. It gives you Exchange, which which normally you have to pay an additional $1,000 for. It gives you just all this wonderful functionality in one simple edition. So if you're dealing with a small business, this is probably what you want to go with. So next we come to just the standard server edition for Windows servers. So Windows Server 2008 Standard Edition. This is the standard server that you will run into in a corporate environment or in the real world. Unfortunately, too many small businesses don't know about small business server, and so they go out and they buy the normal server. And it doesn't do a whole lot for them, but they think they have a server. So you do run into it a lot. Basically, what the server allows you to do is it gives you all the functionality of the server, and with no limitations other than, well, really hardware limitations. So with a standard edition server, you have Active Directory, so you can create a domain. Beyond that, unlike with Small Business Server, or with that Foundation Edition, you can do trust relationships and either make it a child or a parent domain. So if you have a Standard Edition server, you can make that the parent of child domains. Again, that gets into a lot of complicated stuff. So if you don't understand child domains and you don't understand trusts, just take my word for it, Standard Edition will do that for you. You can put as many user accounts onto that Active Directory server as you want. Like I say, Microsoft, I think, says for hardware requirements, you can go up to about 10,000 user accounts per Active Directory server for the Windows Standard Edition. So I mean that's a lot of user accounts that you can put onto one server if you really want to. And basically they suggest you cap it at 10,000 simply because of hardware performance issues. You can do a full web server and FTP site off of server Standard Edition. So if you wanted to run, I don't know, the next Travelocity, you could run that off of the Standard Edition. It has FTP, it has VPN connection, so you can create virtual private networks from the outside world and get into the server, and things like that. What it doesn't have, though, is, again, remember that Exchange, what I was talking about, is an add-on component for a server. So you get Exchange, the email server, as part of Small Business Server, but not part of the normal server. With a normal server, you just get Active Directory, you have the ability to create websites, you have the ability to create virtual private networks and such, but you don't get the functionality of Exchange server or Microsoft SQL server on there. You can install that later, but it'll cost you about $1,000. So basically, the Server Standard Edition is the standard for most companies out there. You can put it into clusters. You can do a lot of things with it, but this is a very solid, just stable edition of the operating system that doesn't have a lot of additional bells and whistles. Now, once you get past the Windows Server Standard Edition, then you get into the bigger, more expensive server operating systems. This is where you have Enterprise Edition, you have Data Center Edition, and you have something called HPC, High Performance Computing Edition. These go back to, if you don't understand what they are or don't know what they are, then you don't need them. These are very, 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 very expensive forms of the server software, and you're not going to run into it until you actually get a job where you need this stuff. So if you're running massive databases, again, like Travelocity or some software company that just needs incredible amounts of data, then you may have like the Data Center Edition. If you're dealing with a huge corporation, 300,000-400,000 employees, you might need the Enterprise Edition. I want you to understand that these editions do exist, and so there's stuff that is above Windows Server Standard Edition, but you're probably not going to see it in the real world, and even if you did get your hands on a copy of it, probably wouldn't really know what to do with it because it's very, very specialized software. So just remember that even the past standard edition, there still are a lot of other editions to go with. So as I talked about a little bit before, you have the server operating systems and then you have server software. And so you have to make sure that you understand the difference between the two. Microsoft packages a lot of software or a lot of components with their servers. So again, if you buy the web edition of Windows Server, you will get the ability to host a website. So there's something called IIS, or Internet Information Server, that allows you to host a website on a web edition computer. If you're dealing with Windows Server Foundation, they give you the component to do Active Directory so that you can create a domain for your computers and for your users. Something many people get confused with is that they then start thinking that Microsoft gives you more stuff than it actually does give you. So one of the products that Microsoft has that many people are used to hearing about is something called Microsoft Exchange. Exchange is an email server. So this is how emails get routed to a company, and then an Exchange server then routes those emails to all the different users, to smartphones, to computers, etc. So all the rules for how emails will be handled within a company resides within an Exchange server. Where you have to be careful is the Exchange server is software that is in addition to a normal server. So if you want to run an Exchange email server, you have to buy not only Windows Exchange, which will cost you $1,000 or $2,000, but you also have to put that onto a server that has Windows Server Standard Edition on it. So you have to buy the Windows Server Standard Edition, which will cost you $600 to $1,000, and then on top of that, you install Exchange Server. That is a different product. It is bundled. If you buy the small business server, they bundle those two products together, but in the normal, regular world, if you want to run an Exchange server, you have to buy both the Windows Standard Edition server and Exchange server. You install the Exchange server software onto that Windows Standard Edition server. The same is true with MS SQL. So Microsoft SQL is database software. This you have to install, again, onto a Windows server. So you have to buy not only the Microsoft SQL software, but also the server software. The same is true for SharePoint services. So if you want to share files and do all that kind of stuff, you have to install SharePoint Server on top of the Windows Server operating system. Many people get this confused. They see Windows Exchange Server and they just buy that Exchange Server software because they think that's the entire thing, that's the entire product. They don't realize you also have to buy the server operating system, or they buy the SharePoint software and they think they're going to get everything with that package. And no, you get the SharePoint component, but you have to install that SharePoint onto a server operating system. Huge pitfall, and it can make things expensive really quick. As technicians who are going to be hopefully at some point giving advice to the boss on what you're going to buy, or you are the boss and you have to figure out what you're going to buy, understanding how this works makes a huge difference. When I was looking to have a work order system for my company, I found a lot of products that did not seem very bad to begin with. They were like, you pay $3,000 or $4,000 for the product, and then you pay $500 per user account, and it was a little expensive, but for the functionality that would give us, it was reasonable. Until they told us you have to install this software onto a Microsoft Standard Edition server. You need Microsoft SQL in order to run the database component, and you need Microsoft Exchange to run the email component. Well, that meant this $3,000 piece of software was going to have another $1,000 added for the server, was going to have another $1,000 added for Exchange, and was going to have another $1,000 added for Microsoft SQL. So $3,000 then ballooned to $6,000. Also, remember, as we talked about in the licensing, you do have CALs, client access licenses, or with Exchange, you have whatever their version is. Basically, For many pieces of the server software, not only do you buy the server software itself, but you actually have to buy access licenses to access it. So when you buy Exchange Server, you get 5 access licenses. That means you can only create 5 mailboxes, 5 user mailboxes with the product you bought. If you want to create any more mailboxes, you have to buy those in packs. You may buy another 5 cals or another 10 cals or another 20 cals, but those are all additional money. So again, if you have a 10-person office, you're thinking about, let's say buying a work order system like I was thinking about, you have to add in, okay, it's going to cost $4,000 for this work order system. Plus it's going to cost $3,000 for the server software, the Exchange software, and the SQL software. On top of that, if you have 10 or 15 employees, each one of those needs an access license to access not just the server, but also Exchange and Microsoft SQL. So that may add another $1,000 or $2,000. So this product that you thought was very reasonably priced at, let's say, $3,000, you may end up having to spend $8,000 in total licenses to get that bloody thing to work. This really does happen in the real world, and like I say, these costs can spiral dramatically. But the main thing to remember is, especially when you're looking at buying or putting a Microsoft server into production, for the most part, Exchange, Microsoft SQL, SharePoint services, and a number of other of these specialty things that a server can do are add-on components. You have to buy those pieces of software on top of the server operating systems, and then you also have to buy access licenses, just like you have to buy cals for a server. So just keep that in mind. So that's about it for this class. I just wanted to give you an overview of the different editions of Windows Server operating systems that are out there, mainly so you know that there are all these weird little editions that are out there and that they all do their own weird little things. I mean, the worst thing in the world that can happen to you as a technician is that you buy a product, you implement a product, you do all the work, you buy equipment, you do everything, and then right at the last second, you find out whatever it is you bought doesn't do this one little tiny thing that you need it to do. And that's when things go bad real quick. So again, as professionals, you're going to be asked, what is your opinion on what products to buy, or you're going to be asked to specifically buy a product. And you have to realize that Microsoft really has made this stuff this confusing. We did that whole class simply on Windows Server licensing. So Windows Server licensing is its own little annoying, tedious mess. And then on top of the Windows Server licensing, you have to deal with all the different editions of the server software. Again, back in the day, back when I started, there were 2 versions of the server software. If you didn't know about the second one, it meant you didn't need the second one. And if you knew about the second one, it meant you needed it. Basically that was it. You always used just whatever it was called, NT server, as I recall. That's it. That was all there is. Now there are lots and lots and lots of different versions out there, and especially if you go back to Windows Server 2003, they bring editions of servers online, and then depending on how those editions sell, they either keep them or get rid of them. Like I just heard that there was a mid-sized version of the small business server. So if you had a business with somewhere between 100 to 500 employees, they had a version of small business server for your company. Well, for whatever reason, Microsoft decided they didn't like that, and so as of Windows Server 2008 Release 2, or Revision 2, they no longer have that edition. That edition just went away. It disappeared. It's important to understand that these editions do come and go and that they may exist, because if you have to go in behind another technician, or if you get hired to a company that already has infrastructure deployed, you need to know that infrastructure may have limitations that you hadn't even thought about. So again, this was a short, sweet little class. You don't have to memorize everything I told you in here. We're going to have resource links down there below us, so you can look and see what all these different servers do. The main thing I just need to get through your head is, Web Server Edition does one thing. Small Business Server Edition does another thing. Foundation Edition does another thing. Standard Edition does another thing. These all do different things. They all have different limitations, and you need to make sure you buy the right one. Especially in the real world, like I say, the Web Edition only costs about $300 versus the Standard Edition costs $800. It would be real tempting to try to lowball things and try to go cheap and only buy the Web Server Edition. That's not going to do well for you. So again, this was just a pretty simple class. This was Understanding Windows Server Editions. As always, I'm Eli the Computer Guy, and I look forward to seeing you at the next class.